Now back to the WATK AM 900 Arby's Breakfast Club, presented as a community service by Parsons of Anago. Here's your Breakfast Club host, Gary Hartle.
It is 7:30, and our guests on the program today are Ron Moseman and his son Matt Moseman, both from the Anawa area. Ron is the co-founder of a group called the River City Paranormal Society, and just sounds like an interesting topic. A lot of times on the program, we'll talk about fundraisers, and we'll talk about events and activities that are going on, and that's always great stuff. But today we're not asking for any financial help. We're just talking about a topic that I think is interesting to a lot of people. And Ron and Matt, good morning. Nice to see you guys. Appreciate you coming in and seeing us on the Breakfast Club. Ron, you were the co-founder of this group, the River City Paranormal Society. Before we get into the background on the group itself and what you do, how would you describe paranormal activity? It's kind of a thing we hear about a lot in the movies. There's a whole series of movies about paranormal events. A lot of reality television about people that are ghost chasers and that sort of thing. So if I was to say to you, what is paranormal activity? What's the best answer?
Good morning, Gary. I guess paranormal activity, to sum it up, is just something that happens that can't entirely be explained. We sort of loosely call ourselves ghost hunters, and that's kind of a misnomer because some of the unexplained things that happen, if it's being caused by ghosts, is only probably one possible explanation. The ghost hunting or paranormal investigation genre is huge right now. It's actually starting to ebb, and it all kind of got started through the paranormal TV shows. The biggest, of course, and probably one of the first, was Ghost Hunters, which is, the TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society, and it sort of got the ball rolling. And now there are groups all over the place researching and investigating the paranormal. Paranormal is just something that we can't explain, and we want to explain it. And we do our best to approach it as scientifically and logically as possible. We don't use any. There are teams that use psychics and mediums and various forms of clairvoyance. We don't do any of that. We try and do it scientifically and logically, and to explain things that haven't yet been explained. It covers all sorts of areas. We concentrate on investigating reportedly haunted, and there's another word that's kind of maybe a misnomer, but haunted locations. And paranormal also includes things like, Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and UFOs and all of that. But I guess, yeah, it's kind of a misnomer, but go ahead and call us ghost hunters.
Yeah, and your focus is that you're not looking for Bigfoot, or you're not looking for UFOs. You're focusing primarily, if I'm right, on just unusual activity in a building, in a site.
Correct.
So is it to get involved in this and to spend a lot of time with all the equipment and the different investigations that you conduct? Is it prerequisite that you believe in ghosts? Is it deep-seated? Maybe you read a lot of ghost stories back as a kid and thought, this has got to be true. Do you believe in ghosts?
It's a question that I get asked frequently, and it's not one that I can answer with a yes or a no, I guess. And I'll let Matt give his own answer in a moment here. But I think probably even as a team, individually, people have different levels of belief. But I guess as myself, and even as a team approach, I kind of acknowledge that there are things going on that cannot be explained, and I think that it's possible that there are ghosts, but perhaps there are other causes for the phenomenon that people attribute to ghosts. So I guess I could believe in ghosts. I'm trying to I want to prove it to myself. Mm-hmm. And you can't prove a negative. I don't know that we can ever prove that ghosts do not exist. Someday I hope to have that wow moment during an investigation, or that bit of evidence that then I'll say, okay, now I believe in ghosts. I've seen a lot of things since I've started doing this that I can't explain. A lot of experiences that I just can't explain away. But I always tell myself, just because I can't explain whatever that was that just happened doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be explained somehow. And we've had things that have happened that way, things that we'll have an experience where we'll go, wow, that's unexplainable. And then later on, we're able to explain it. And so, do I believe in ghosts? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And part of it is looking for an explanation of something that maybe there might not have been an explanation for. We're going to turn to Matt Moseman. And so how did you get involved? Did you kind of follow in Ron's footsteps, if you will, where he started doing this and you said, maybe, that's kind of interesting. What's your own story, Matt, in terms of your participation in this group?
Well, Dad was involved before I was. He got in touch with the team 5 years ago.
I started in 2006.
So, yeah. He got a hold of RCPS and started talking to him, and they said, hey, why don't you put in an application and then come on down and do an interview, and maybe we can get you on the team. And he started doing it, and he'd come home and tell all these stories about, some of the weird stuff that they encountered. And I thought, hey, I've always been interested in it. I've had a few experiences before I was on the team, and made me kind of wonder, maybe there, is there, isn't there? So eventually, I put in my own application and was accepted, and did some training, and part of the team. So
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the River City Paranormal Society and what you guys do. So Ron, you've got a website, and you're trying to get the word out there of what you do, and apparently you're pretty busy. You're getting out and doing a lot of these investigations. So what exactly do you do?
Well, first of all, the RCPS, River City's Paranormal, John and Shelley Wood, Shelley's his wife, they're in Wisconsin Rapids. They actually, back in, I believe it was in the year 2000, they decided that they've always been fascinated by this. They decided they wanted to do paranormal investigating, and just the two of them, if I'm not mistaken, started out. They called themselves Wraith Watchers, which was a takeoff on Weight Watchers. So, and then this evolved into River City's Paranormal. As I said, I joined in 2006, and as I said a few moments ago, we tried to, as scientifically as possible, gather evidence of paranormal activity. And the way that works is usually people contact us. More often than not, it will be someone in a home or a residence. Occasionally, it'll be a business, or and they contact us because there are things going on in their location that they can't explain. And some people are frightened. Interestingly enough, a lot of people are kind of comfortable with whatever's going on. They're just very curious about it. And those are the ones we enjoy the most. If you go when people are scared to death, there's a little more urgency about it. So people contact us. We have an information gathering process that we go through, sort of almost an application. In fact, we do have a written application. Sometimes I'll just send that to people and ask them to complete it. Other times we can do it on the phone. We're a little bit particular about where we investigate. We're totally self-funded. We don't charge anyone a dime for what we do, so there's quite an expense involved. So before we drive for a couple hours and go somewhere and find out it's just a total flop, we're kind of particular about where we go and what we do. We try to, as near as we can, determine how sincere people are and how legitimate and how rational. We get calls from crazy people that, I don't like to use that term, but for lack of a better one, that, and sometimes it's pretty obvious that they're delusional. We're very careful not to go to those places. You don't want to, reinforce someone's delusion by coming in there and doing a big investigation. If everything looks good, looks on the up and up, we will schedule an investigation and take it from there. Usually, if it's not too far away and if it works out, I try and do a pre-investigation visit where I'll go meet the people, see the place, kind of get a rough idea of what we're going to need to do once we get there, and then we just sort of take it from there.
Yeah. Ron Moseman and Matt Moseman with us this morning from the River City Paranormal Society, and I want to know what's the craziest thing you guys ever stumbled upon. So maybe we can find out about that when we come back on the program. And we mention again that as a preferred employer, one of our sponsors, Waukesha Bearings, has a long history of supporting community groups and events and programs like the Breakfast Club.
Now back to the WATK AM 900 Arby's Breakfast Club, presented as a community service by Parsons of Anago. Here's your Breakfast Club host, Gary Hartle.
18 minutes before the hour, and before we go back to our conversation about paranormal and things like that, let's just remind you about an event coming up tomorrow. We talked about this yesterday with Barb Resch from the Aging and Disability Resource Center and a group called the Healthy Ways Coalition. The third annual Healthy Ways Walk will begin tomorrow at the Hudson Street Shelter on the boardwalk and continue with booths along the way and healthy ideas and tips about walking and exercise, and several hundred people they're expected may participate in that. So that's going to be from 4 to 6 o'clock tomorrow down near Merritt Gear, and should be a lot of fun. You'll see a gathering of people and a healthy way to enjoy a Wednesday night. If it rains, then that will be moved to the next day on Thursday. We're talking about I guess paranormal activity, ghosts and things that go bump in the night, and strange things like that with Ron Moseman and Matt Moseman from the River City Paranormal Society. This is a group based in Wisconsin Rapids. And Matt, we were talking about the process of people contacting you and saying, I've got something unusual happening in my house or in my building, in my barn, whatever the case might be. What type of equipment do you use when you get in and you start setting up? Can you kind of walk us through a process? You're not using, cheap little cassette recorders to see if you can find a ghost. You've got some pretty sophisticated stuff.
Some of it's pretty pretty high end. We usually set up a DVR system with 8 or 9 infrared cameras, totally see in the dark cameras that we record onto the DVR with. We have 2 microphones or CD recording quality microphones. Good stuff. I mean, we've had to throw out evidence because we've caught conversations in the house next door, and we just had to toss it because once we realized what it was, we just had to toss it. So we have the cameras, the microphones. Everybody on the team has handheld voice recorders. You can pick them up anywhere. You can get them at Walmart. For personal, like when we go in the house and start doing the investigation, we do EVP work. We have those. EMF meters, electromagnetic field meters, just all sorts of odds and ends, handheld cameras, full spectrum cameras, infrared and what's the other one I'm looking for? Ultraviolet cameras. We have infrared floodlights to add more, because once it's in the dark, I mean, you can be in a totally dark room and still see on the camera. So we have extra IR floodlights to make it a little brighter, and all sorts of gadgets. I mean, it's hard to keep track of it all.
And I imagine if you are in the your ghost hunters, I guess, and whoever would be successful in getting some video or proof positive that this is not just a mist of fog or a crazy noise, potentially it could be like hitting the jackpot. You'd be pretty well known guys, so you have to have the equipment that's going to be accepted in the field, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, and not only accepted, but I mean, there's some stuff that some teams use that we just don't use because there's too many false positives on it. The big one you'll see on TV all the time is a K2 meter, and people think, oh, well, this is great. It's a telephone to the dead, and it's really not, because a squad car driving down the road, officer on his radio can set it off a couple blocks away. So you have this thing going off, and it's, oh my gosh, there's a ghost here. Definitely got to be a ghost. And well, it's just it's an officer down the road using his radio. So there's stuff that we don't use because we know what it does. And then there's some equipment now that we're experimenting with. We don't know even if down the line if it'll even have any use in the paranormal field, but the theories behind it they sound interesting, and it could help. It could help us determine if there's paranormal activity. So
yeah. We're going to bounce over to Ron again for a bit here. So have you found anything that is just hard to explain? You just can't come up with an answer. I imagine you debunk a lot of things that people think are happening. But any stories about, the nuggets where you're talking to people at a dinner conversation and saying, well, listen to this. Do you have any stories like that?
Yeah, probably quite a few of them. The one that first comes to mind when people ask me that actually happened on my very first investigation. We were investigating, it was an apartment actually in Marshfield, and back in those days we still investigated apartments. We avoid those now just because it's so hard to weed out false positives. You pick up the people upstairs and the people next door. But we were in an apartment, and there was a hallway with a bedroom on each side of the hallway, and I was sitting in one of the bedrooms, sitting on the bed, and which is something else we don't do now. Back in those days, we would still go and sit by ourselves. Now we always work in teams. That's not so much for a safety issue, but it's more or less to validate what happens. And I was sitting in the bedroom alone, and I was doing EVP work, and I'll talk a little bit more about what EVPs are shortly, but basically talking and trying to get a response. And I had my handheld recorder with me, and I was asking questions. And at one point I said, well, if you're here, let me know you're here, give me a sign that you're here, knock my hat off, touch my shoulder. And at that point I heard, and it was right next to my ear. At the time I thought it was a sigh. And later on, when I listened to the recording of it, it was a voice, a raspy voice going, no, which got my attention when I listened to the recording. Well, 10 seconds after that happened, there was a guy sitting in the bedroom across the hall. And I heard a clatter in there, and I heard him go, wow, that's not what he said. But and so we went over there, and we had an infrared camera set up in the room that he was sitting in. It was a teenage girl's room, and the camera was sitting on a desk on a short tripod, practically right up against the wall, facing into the room. And that camera had fallen over, and we thought, well, okay, big deal. The camera fell over, But later on, looking at the video from that infrared camera, it doesn't just fall over. It actually tipped backwards, again, like probably right against the wall. So the view from the camera was looking right up at the ceiling, and then it flies forward into the room. That's one of those things, as I said, I have no explanation for why that happened. The guy was in there by himself. How did that camera, if it had just fallen over, we could explain that away, but it tipped back, looked up at the ceiling, and then flew into the room. A while later, I was sitting in that room. I wanted to be in there because that's where the action was, and I was in there by myself. And again, these are infrared cameras, so I'm sitting there in total darkness, and I'm asking questions again. And at one point I say, did you tip the camera over, and can you do it again? This time I heard nothing at the time, and that's kind of the essence of like EVPs, which is electronic voice phenomenon. You don't hear what's going on at the time, but you hear it later on your recording equipment. And later on, listening to that recording, I say, can you tip the camera over again? And there's a voice on there, a whispered voice saying, where is it? Interesting stuff. It's so that, and I said that was my first investigation, and I was hooked. Not all investigations are that. In fact, we have investigations where absolutely nothing happens. There are investigations that are boring, but that's one of my stories.
How about the reaction of the people that call you? Somebody says, I've got a bunch of things that are going on in my house, noises and things are happening, and you come in. Are they disappointed if you don't find anything? I mean, they're looking for some validation, I suppose, of what they're thinking is happening.
That's exactly what they're looking for. I have people call me and say, I don't even need you to come and investigate. I just wanted to talk to somebody that doesn't think I'm crazy. But I try and make it very clear to people before we investigate that it's entirely possible that we may come in there and not find a thing. It doesn't mean, A, it doesn't mean you're crazy. B, it doesn't mean you're lying to us. It just means that they don't perform on cue. I said, and we'll go back to locations several times. We have one location, I think we've been there 6 or 7 times, and you keep going back and you keep trying. Sometimes you'll catch a little bit. Sometimes you get nothing. Sometimes it'll be really active. So we try and set people up ahead of time so that they're not totally disappointed when we show up. Another thing that I always stress to people is that whatever we do is not going to make this stop, and it's not going to make it go away. We don't perform exorcisms. We don't cast out demons. We don't do any of that stuff. And we always caution people to be very careful of teams that claim that they can do that. There are teams, oh, sure, we'll come in and we'll rid your house of ghosts. We'll do these, whatever we do, and we'll make them go away. We don't think that it's even been scientifically proven yet that ghosts exist, much less that there's a surefire method for getting rid of them. So we caution. Another caution, and as long as I'm rambling on here, another thing we caution people about is teams that charge for services. That's a scam. When you charge for something, you're implying that you are in some way a professional, and there are no professional ghost hunters. There are enthusiasts. But be very careful of anybody that's going to come in and charge you money. So, yeah, people sometimes are disappointed when we don't find anything, but we try and set them up ahead of time so that they know that that's a possibility, and in some cases maybe even a likelihood. That the recent case in Amherst, we investigated for 5 or 6 hours, I believe, and we have a couple little audio clips that don't amount to much. Yeah, might be something and might not. So, yeah.
I imagine as long as people have been looking for ghosts and writing about ghosts, if they wanted to be seen, they'd have been seen.
There are a lot of questions like that you have to ask yourself. I sometimes think, okay, if they're there and if they can communicate with us, why don't they? Why don't they make it? So either that's not easily done, if or it's something else entirely, and it's not, spirits of dead people that are trying to communicate with us. So there were a lot more questions than answers in this field.
I have a spirit tapping me on the shoulder telling me it's time to read a commercial. Chevy runs deep at Parsons of Anago, where you'll find all the new models from Chevrolet and Buick. Check out the all-new 2013 Chevy Malibu with e-assist, a system using an advanced battery to provide electrical boost in various driving conditions. This allows for increased fuel economy and overall engine efficiency. Call Parsons of Anago at 715-627-4888 or stop in at 515 Amron Avenue in Antigo. Parsons, serving you with pride since 1935. We're going to stick with our ghostly topics on the program when we come back. As a preferred employer, Waukesha Bearings has a long history of supporting community groups and events.
Now back to the WATK AM 900 Arby's Breakfast Club, presented as a community service by Parsons of Anago. Here's your Breakfast Club host, Gary Hartle.
We are at 3 minutes before the hour. Of course, the news from ABC comes up in just a couple of minutes. And we're visiting with Ron Moseman and Matt Moseman this morning from the River City Paranormal Society, Ghost Hunters. And an interesting topic. We'll talk a little bit more when we come back about some of the things they can debunk, things that people maybe think are paranormal activities that are not. But before we get to the news, Ron, you mentioned there's things you don't do. And among those things that you don't do, you don't get into abandoned buildings, right? And you don't, for example, if somebody wants to connect with a member of the family that they think is still around, you're not a psychic organization.
Correct. We use no methods of clairvoyance. We're very careful about that. I don't want this to turn into a psychic bashing session, but there are so many psychics that are. They're scams. They fool people and they fake it for money. We're careful not to do that. We are very careful about people who contact us and say, my husband just passed away, or can you connect me to him? Well, no, we can't. We're very careful about that. We don't abandon buildings. You mentioned we absolutely do not trespass. And in fact, there are some groups that do that, and it gives everybody a real bad name. They'll break into abandoned buildings. We avoid investigating in cemeteries. just because it's pretty much public property. It's disrespectful. Some people would be offended if they thought we were walking around over their relatives' grave sites, looking for ghosts.
Sure. I'm going to cut you right off
Okay.
because we're going to go to the news, and then we're going to come back and talk. Matt's got a couple of stories about things you may have found and things that you find that you can explain. We'll talk about that too when we come back. We're talking about the River City Paranormal Society, and we're back after the news. This is WATK Anago, AM 900. It's just about 8 o'clock.
Now back to the WATK AM 900 Arby's Breakfast Club, presented as a community service by Parsons of Anago. Here's your Breakfast Club host, Gary Hartle.
And welcome back to the program, everyone. It is, what do we have for a day today? It's the 5th of June, and we want to remind you that we do the program every day, Monday through Friday at Arby's. Coming up tomorrow morning, we have Jenny Behrens of Edward Jones popping in to see us, and then Kathy Orlett from Relay for Life. Relay, the big cancer fundraising event, is coming up Friday evening, and basically kind of all day Friday and into Saturday at the Anago High School. A great event, not only to raise funds for the fight against cancer and cancer research, but just a great community event where people get together and remember folks who have been lost to cancer or survivors. So it's a great event, and Kathy Orlett comes in tomorrow to talk about Relay for Life. Ron Moseman and Matt Moseman from the River City Paranormal Society are with us today. Kind of a fun topic, talking about ghosts, and a couple of guys that are part of a group, and they go out and look for signs of paranormal activity. And Matt, we'll start this portion of the program with you. I see something in the Wausau paper this morning about a group called the Tri-County Paranormal Group. They're going to be featured on an online reality TV show, and we talked a little bit about Ghost Hunters and some of these other programs. It's something that has captured the imagination of a lot of people, not only now but forever, I guess. Right? Is that where your interest kind of comes in?
Yeah. I mean, people have always had had wondered about, what happens when you die. Do you go to heaven? Is there hell? Do you wander the earth? For as long as probably religion has been around, spirituality, what happens? And I think we've always just had a little curiosity about, what really does go on when you die.
Sure. And you read some spiritual books where people think there's an afterlife. It's not the typical picture of heaven. It's just these spirits that are out there and occupying all this space next to us. And maybe logical to think that at some point we'd be able to connect with them. When you go into these investigations, Matt, do you have a sense of skepticism of, okay, now we're going to disprove another one, or do you think maybe this is the one where we're going to hit the spot here? And a little bit of both in terms of your team?
A little bit of both. We're always looking for some good evidence, but most of the time when we go to a location, we go in attempting to debunk what the claims, the theories, whatever the owner has. There's stuff moving around. Well, there's been some locations where the house has been close to a railroad track, and they have stuff falling off the walls. Well, probably because when the train goes through, it vibrates enough where something falls off the walls, bumps and bangs. So we go in trying to disprove, and then anything that we can't disprove, we might put the label on as being paranormal.
And Ron, what exactly are some of the things that you debunk? I guess if you're looking for pictures of a ghost, you can go online and somebody will have pictures of, I guess the common term is an orb or a mist, and you think, well, look at this, has to be a ghost because look at this unusual thing that's out there in my photograph. That would be something that's pretty easy to debunk.
Yeah, unfortunately there's a lot of bad evidence posted online. Some groups post things that are just obviously not paranormal, and Orbs is a good example of that. You'll see a lot of orb photos on various websites online that are, supposedly paranormal activity. We get people that send us photos of orbs and ask us to analyze them. And basically, orbs are particles in the air, a speck of dust, a bit of lint, something like that, or a bug, insects. And when you take a flash photo, usually this particle will be very, very close to the camera lens. But because cameras lend dimension to a photo, the flash reflects off this little speck of whatever it is and makes it look like it's out there in the room hovering over someone's head, and it's a speck of dust. People get very upset when we tell them, sorry, that's not your deceased Uncle Fred. It's a piece of lint, We pick up a lot of orbs in our video footage on our infrared cameras. When we review evidence, we sit and watch hours of this stuff, and you see orbs floating through all the time, and it's dust. Mist is another one. People will send us photos of this ghostly mist hanging over a cemetery. More often than not, that will be just the humidity in the air that the camera will pick up that you might not see with the naked eye, but when you take a flash photo, you see this mist. Cigarette smoke is another obvious cause of mist. Another biggie is vortexes, a portal to another world. It'll be a very, almost a tornado-shaped spiral bright color in the center of a room or a photo. Most of the time, that's a camera strap, and you can do that yourself. Take a camera, make sure the strap is hanging in front of the lens. Take a flash photo, and you'll have this bright light or vortex thing hanging down in the middle of the picture, and it's a camera strap. We get a lot of those too submitted, and people post them online. So there's a lot of bad evidence out there posted by people that proclaim themselves to be paranormal investigators that should know better. So it's, yeah.
And people have been looking for, I guess, proof of paranormal activity for probably as long as people have been around. I think Houdini, didn't he make some kind of a pact that he was going to come back and prove that there's an afterlife? And what happened there? I guess.
Well, in the last few years of Harry Houdini's life, he devoted himself to exposing and debunking mysticism and mediums and psychics were huge then, and you can still go online and find old photos of mystics, with ectoplasm coming out of their mouths, and for the most part they were all phony. And Harry Houdini, being a magician, was able to expose how a lot of these things were faked. And so then when he died, he told his family that he would, if it was at all possible to come back from the afterlife and contact them, he would do that. So every year, I believe it's on the anniversary of his death. He died on Halloween, by the way. They hold seances and they try and contact Harry, and it hasn't happened yet. So Harry Houdini grew up in Appleton, by the way. There's a really neat little Harry Houdini exhibit in the museum downtown in Appleton. If people are interested in that, it's a fascinating story. Yeah.
And even I think another famous magician, James Randi, has a foundation offering a prize of $1 million to anybody who can prove they have supernatural or paranormal abilities. And nobody's come forward to claim that prize either.
Nobody's claimed it yet. Yeah. And James Randi was also a magician, and magicians tend to be pretty good at debunking this stuff because they know how to.
They know how to fool people.
They know how to fool people. That's exactly right.
How about we were talking a little bit about things like Bigfoot and things like that, and Matt was talking a little bit during the break that there are cases where unusual animals have been reported, or beasts around the state of Wisconsin, and you haven't gotten into that simply because you're potentially going to be looking at trespassing on people's property. Too many approvals you're going to need along the way. So you focus on things that are single property owners and something where you can get in and more or less secure the surroundings. Is that right?
Well, I think it's the scope of Bigfoot investigations. And actually, I highly doubt that there are any Bigfoots roaming around the woods of Wisconsin anyway.
The hodag, right?
There's the hodag obviously exists, but but I think it's just the scope of it. In order to really seriously hunt for Bigfoot, it would require much more people and equipment and time and effort than our group has. So I think, we concentrate on places where we can do smaller locations and, concentrate our efforts in a smaller area. And we've done, as we talked during the break, we've done Bigfoot hunts just on a lark in the woods near Wisconsin Rapids. But it was more just to go out and have fun than to seriously search for Bigfoot. So.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the process of screening people that would like you to come on in, and the procedure that leads up to coming in and doing an investigation. Have you done anything in the Anago area?
We have not, and we would love to. It's most, like I said, the group is based in Wisconsin Rapids. We used to cover the entire state of Wisconsin. We've cut with gas prices and. For a few other reasons, we've kind of cut that back now. We will go. We will travel probably a couple hours from Wisconsin Rapids or Anago. There are 8 members in the group. 5 of them are in Wisconsin Rapids. There are 3 of us up here. But if we had a case in Anago that looked promising, everyone would show up, and we would go do that. So, we would love to investigate in Anago.
Just have to have somebody contact you. And
yes.
Your River City Paranormal Society, based in Wisconsin Rapids. And Matt, there's a number of groups like this in Wisconsin, aren't there? I see we mentioned the program in the internet program that's going to be a reality show featuring the Tri-County group in the Wausau area, but a number around the state and, of course, all over the country. So it's sort of a big deal.
It is. It's almost becoming a subculture. Teams are popping up everywhere. There are numerous ones in Wisconsin. There's Tri-County. There's Milwaukee Paranormal. Wausau Paranormal. Like I said, they're just popping up everywhere. Sometimes there's numerous ones in one city. I think Milwaukee has a couple different ones. Some probably more credible than others. It's just, it's becoming real popular. Everybody wants to do it. They see it on TV and they say, hey, this looks cool. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
So,
and Ron, you're part of a group. I think you mentioned you're part of a group that is in Kansas City as well.
We have a sister group. Yeah, River City's Paranormal, KC, Kansas City, Missouri, and that's run by a gentleman named Rick Hart. And so I'll give him a little plug here today.
Yeah. So do you find yourself having a dinner conversation that turns to this sort of thing quite often, where people find out what you do is sort of a hobby, and one thing leads to another, and you spend several hours talking about ghosts and things that you can't prove or disprove?
That does happen. When people find out what we do, they're very curious about it. And it ranges from I totally believe in ghosts and they're everywhere, to people who are totally skeptical and say there just is no such thing and you're wasting your time. But it does generate some interesting conversation. Yes.
I'm sure it does. It's been fun having you guys on the program. It's about 16 minutes after the hour. And just in the event that somebody listening to the program is thinking, maybe these guys could come in and explain away something that's going on here. The types of things, again, that you'd be interested in looking at are, maybe noises and conversation, that sort of thing in general.
If people have anything that's going on, and it can be a home, it can be a business. We've investigated in several businesses. It can even be an area. We've investigated in abandoned farmhouses and barns, and outside areas are a little bit trickier because it's harder to control the environment, and so you're getting some, you're picking up audio from a ways away, so it's a little harder to control that. But and people call us usually. They're experiencing things in their home that they can't explain, and noises. Sometimes people will see things. Things move around in the house. Voices. Those types of things. So
Sounds interesting. And if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more about what you do, just in the event that somebody has maybe a ghost in the closet, how's the best way to get in touch with River City Paranormal?
Well, we have, if people just want to learn more about us, we have a couple of websites. First is the River City's Paranormal website, which is rcpswi.com. It's rcpswi.com. We also have a paranormal social networking site, which is MyPara, MyPara, short for My Paranormal, mypara.net, which is a social site. That's a fun site.
Facebook.
Yeah, it's similar.
Like Facebook.
Yeah, similar, sort of a Facebook type site. There are forums on there. You can discuss all things paranormal. So those are two places that people can go. We also have a Facebook page, River City's Paranormal Society on Facebook. And to contact us, two ways to do it. People can call me at 715-623-3849. That's a local number. 715-623-3849. Or they can email me, and that's rcpswi@hotmail.com. So
Must have been fun. Interesting. Make me a promise, if you would. If you do find a ghost that would be interested in being on the radio, send them my way. It would be
we will certainly do that, Gary. Yeah. Someday Abraham Lincoln's going to walk up and shake my hand and say, "Hi, I'm pleased to meet you." Yes.
Or Houdini, if
Houdini,
you would like to.
That would be great.
Get back on the radio in Wisconsin. It's been interesting. Ron Moseman, Matt Moseman from River City Paranormal Society, and sounds like an interesting little hobby. And good luck.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Good having you on the program. Right now, it's about 19 minutes after the hour, and we were not going to do a song today about the Queen, but we do have a little music for you before we leave on the program today. And we'll be right back. As a preferred employer, Waukesha Bearings has a long history of supporting community groups and events and programs like the Breakfast Club.